Yeah, they diagnosed it as the actual flu.
They're
I know.
diagnosing that now.
Yeah. So anyway, prayer for Cody, and for Cody and for Bug because their finals are coming up next
Okay.
week. So just that they can get all their studying in and get it done and over with,
Mhm.
and then relax.
Yes. And Carly.
Well, today we had Blessing Day, and the students who were at school, we made hats and scarves to give to a local elementary school, so their students would have some warm clothing to wear if they forgot it or didn't have any. And the kids seemed to really enjoy that. I mean, in an hour's time, I don't know how many hats, 24 hats and 24 scarves.
Nice.
We got them tied, so thanks to Leslie and Miss Judy for cutting all those things out, and of course for Mary Beth and helping Leslie get those things and helping us at school. And Miss Debbie came to help too. She's our Bible Labs coordinator. So it's wonderful to do things with the students to be of service to other people. And we made a card, and all the kids signed their name in red pen. So that was kind of exciting for them too. We have some families that are out. The Nedwash family, Mackenzie was diagnosed with COVID. And so now the boys and Nicole are in quarantine till the 18th. And she goes, I am just going to lose my mind. So we need to pray for them and reach out when we can to help them. And Thomas Block's father Josh has COVID, and so Thomas will be out probably till the end of this week, maybe even partly next week. So we have lots of students who are having bronchitis, and so recovering from that. So a lot of sick people, and of course Cody. So I was soloing it today with our students, but God is good. So yeah, this holiday season, this winter weather has taken a toll on attendance, and just to be, I mean, we heard a lot of laughs and stuff with the kids today, so that's good. Just keep laughing, because what did they say? Laughter is good medicine, cheery heart. So,
Right.
and of course they're excited that Christmas break is coming up, but I don't think they really know how excited I am for Christmas break. So we got our chairs too, so that's a blessing, and some things that are coming. Another school has closed, and they're donating a bunch of stuff for our school. So God is really, really good, and I just want to praise him for that goodness.
Okay, Jerry and then Scott.
Yeah, I just just talked with Harry Sponseller, a former member here, and his son David has been in the hospital with COVID, but he is home now. But he's
Yay.
still on oxygen, so he's not an old guy. So we want to keep him in our prayers that he'll continue to recover.
Just recent changes at work. They just recently put in place a policy that I have to make a decision about whether or not I want to continue employment there. Been there for 10 years, so it's kind of a big pivotal thing, and I only have really a short period of time to evaluate whether or not that's going to affect me or not. So I'm going to keep that in prayer.
Yes. Anyone else? Judy.
My niece Margie is beginning to get better. She had her first food tray since the day before Thanksgiving,
Wow.
but she still has a very long way to go. There's something, a problem with her heart, so it will take a while to get that to work correctly.
Anyone else?
Praise that. Miss Linda's back with us. So, yay for Miss Linda.
Yes.
I know I missed her.
Before we pray, I want to know if our friends online, they have any prayer request. Don't go too fast, Neil. We still have to pray together here. I know that you're camera shy, but it's just the internet. So, if you guys have any prayer requests of faith,
Just one more update on Carrie going to Palawan. I just looked at the Prayer Partners page, and she's on her way to Honolulu, and she's hoping that she gets there in time so she can get on that plane to Guam. So, and she got $11,000 worth of medical equipment that she's taking. So it's a very hard to move all that, heavy stuff with her and each step of the way. So it's a miracle that she's where she is right now, that she was able to make her flight. So keep her in your prayers and all of our missionaries.
so Denise, can you help us here, just like to hear your voice? We want to hear your prayers, but we also want to test our setup to make sure if we need to make questions, we can hear you. Is she speaking anything? No? Okay, people are shy, so let's leave it be. So, Neil, can you lead us in prayer then?
Sure. Heavenly Father, you have heard many prayer requests here tonight, and each one is special to you. There's illness, there are people trying to catch flights, there are people that are in need, dear Lord, people in need of you, people helping others. There are joys, too, that have been expressed. And we're thankful to you for all of these things, because we know that you are in charge. And that gives us great comfort to know that, dear Lord, because you are the one that we turn to when we need guidance, when we need hope, and when we need comfort. And we just ask that you address each concern that was expressed here tonight in your own special way. We ask this in your name. Amen. You're welcome.
Need this, but I need that. So, today we are going over chapter 4, and I don't know if you notice, but the title for tonight is like Fallen Kings, Part 1 of 2. There is a continuation. Why? Because that story, it's almost it's a mirror of the next story, but a few things are reversed. So, like that will be the first of that we're gonna see in on the book of Daniel. But for the next few chapters, everything else is the other side of the coin of the chapters we already saw. So chapter 5 will be the other side of the coin of chapter 4. Chapter 6, the other side is the part 2 of chapter 3. And chapter 7, the part 2 of chapter 2. And here we start with something very interesting. Tanya, my love, I think I spoke too soon. We actually may need a microphone for people to read the Bible. I'm going to ask a few people to help me out here, so I don't die while trying to pronounce the King James Version. So who wants to start and helping me here? Let's read the introduction of the prayer, verses 1 to 3. That's the introduction of faith. That's the introduction of the chapter. And I want you to notice that here we see something different. As Faith reads it, let's pay attention on the words that are being read.
Nebuchadnezzar the king unto all people, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied unto you. I thought it good to show the signs and wonders that the high God hath wrought toward me. How great are his signs, and how mighty are his wonders. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and his dominion is from generation to generation.
So, who is speaking those words? Nebuchadnezzar. But does it remind you anything about the Nebuchadnezzar of the previous chapters? Like the older Nebuchadnezzar, like was always like grumpy and like mean. Like every time he shows up, he's like destroying somebody, threatening you to the fire furnace, or like to turn you into Trump. To turn you to pounder, like to annihilate you. Like he's sort of a mean guy. And here we see for the first time ever on the book, like a smiley, friendly, the 70s version of the King Nebuchadnezzar, like all peace and love. So he is a different type of guy here. And in the way he starts with hymn. He's praising God. And he starts with declaring the signs and wonders of God, like the powerful things God did. So it's something that you don't see every day. A pagan king, all of a sudden, seems to be one of us. But the chapter here actually come to place to explain why he's so nice now. What changed on his life? What changed in this guy's life? He became different. And that chapter is also unique in another thing. It's the only chapter on the book that's not dated. The only story, I shouldn't say chapter, but the only story, because chapter 10, 11, and 12 just one story that somebody chopped in different chapters later on, like 1,000 years later. But all the other stories of the book, they are dated. So this one, we don't know exactly when it happened. We know that was in between the lions. We know that was in between the fire furnace thing, and probably about 10 to 15 years before the next chapter, because that was the phase where Nebuchadnezzar, he was in a part on his kingdom, was basically not going to war any longer, because everybody else around him belonged to him. So he was on the top of the world back then. And that's where his problem began. So let's read how that problem began as we go. Let's read verses 4 to 7. Verses 4 to 7. Judy.
I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at rest in my house and flourishing in my palace. I saw a dream which made me afraid, and the thoughts I had and the visions of my head troubled me. Therefore, I issued a decree to all the wise men of Babylon before me, that they might make known to me the interpretation of the dream. Then the magicians, the astrologers, the Chaldeans, and the soothsayers came in And I told them the dream, but they did not make known to me its interpretation.
So here, it's another interesting hint that the author here, and the author of that chapter is not Daniel, it's the king himself that wrote it. Daniel just like slammed on his book. But it's interesting that he had a dream, and that didn't bother him much. And then he says that he got all the wise men of Babylon. Who are those wise men? Like the word here, we kind of get lost in translation, but the word in Aramaic is like somebody that is, how do I say? It's like an expert in interpretation of dreams. I don't know if I have a word for it in English. Somebody that interprets dreams as his business, but that word is like a professional interpreter of dreams. And it's interesting that we know, because of history, that the Babylons were quite good on it. Like they had books of like how to interpret dreams. So he got his best guys on the area, and they couldn't say. What he says that, then the magicians, then the astrologers, then he started to get all the other professionals of the different expertise, those that knew how to invocate spirits, those that need to talk with the gods, those that knew all the other occult arts that they had there, but to none avail. But always I get curious. I know the answer, and I guess you guys know too, but why he didn't invite Daniel to begin with, if he had somebody already like that, two out of, that he knew how to interpret dreams better than anybody. If you have the best of the best there, why you don't call him? Yeah, and he knew that Daniel would tell God's will to him, not necessarily what he wanted to hear. And I guess that's a big part of the problem. But it's interesting that he doesn't invite Daniel. Daniel just shows up on the text, like on verse 8. He says, "But at last Daniel came before me. His name is Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God, and in him is the Spirit of the most holy God. And I told the dream before him, saying." So like, Daniel just, "King, I heard that you're having one of those strange dreams again. Like, so can I help?" The king had no other resource, so he said the dream to him. And the dream is kind of interesting. I didn't prepare a slide today because that chapter I like to talk more than show. But I'm going to tell you something. That chapter is divided in basically 3 portions. The hymn on the top, the hymn on the bottom, and the middle. The middle portion is the more important. But the middle itself, in the way it's organized in 5 different stanzas. Stanzas, like the different strophes of a poem. And the very center is when he explains what's the deal with all this dream. And when we get there, that's where it lies, the whole thing. That's verse 16 and 17. That's the whole center of that chapter that has the most important message. So let's first then see introduction. What is the dream about? So I need a volunteer to read for me from verses 9 to, let's read the whole thing. Verses 9 to verse 17. So let's hear verse 18. So let's read the whole dream, and then I'm going to make some comments, and then we go to the explanation. Could you go for us, Jerry? With your radio voice.
Belteshazzar, chief of the magicians, because I know that the Spirit of the Holy God is in you, and no secret troubles you. Explain to me the visions of my dream that I have seen and its interpretation. These were the visions of my head while on my bed. I was looking, and behold, a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. The tree grew and became strong. Its heights reached to the heavens, and it could be seen to the ends of all the earth. Its leaves were lovely, its fruit abundant, and it was food for all. The beasts of the field found shade under it. The birds of the heavens dwelt in its branches. All flesh was fed from it. I saw the visions of my head while on my bed, and there was a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven. He cried aloud and said thus, Chop down the tree and cut off its branches. Strip off its leaves and scatter its fruit. Let the beasts get out from under it, and the birds from its branches. Nevertheless, leave the stump and roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze, and the tender grass of the field. Let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let him graze with the beast on the grass of the earth. Let his heart be changed from that of a man. Let him be given the heart of a beast, and let 7 times pass over him. This decision is by the decree of the watchers, and the sentence by the word of the holy ones, in order that the living may know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men. Gives it to whomever he will, and sets over it the lowest of men. This dream I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now you, Belteshazzar, declare its interpretation, since all the wise men of my kingdom are not able to make known to me the interpretation, but you are able, for the Spirit of the Holy God is in you.
Already. So that's a very interesting dream. And let's do a quick exercise here. Let me ask you something. Do you know that, do you think that Nebuchadnezzar knew that that dream, that tree was about him? Like some of the words here almost echoed the words of the first dream. Like on chapter 2, it said that his kingdom became so big that everybody was feeding off Babylon. Like when Daniel interprets it, he says like, oh, you are the head of gold and you became great, and now the kings of earth come and feed off you and spread from all over the earth, and like the same type of language. So I guess he had a very good clue that it was him. And perhaps that's why he didn't want to have Daniel to tell him what was God's take on it. It's like when you know that something good's not coming your way, you're like, you don't want to open that letter. It's like, it's almost like a being asked to come to HR, and then you receive a pink slip. You don't know what's inside. Maybe a raise, but most of the times it's something else. It's the famous pink slip. So that's the same deal that is going on here. And here we see that also was not a very unusual symbology. Like we see in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 31, verses 3 to 9. We won't open there, but if you want later you can read it. We see another vision where God is equating the king of Syria, like a few generations before Babylon, as being one of those trees that's like defiantly going over the whole earth and like trying to take the place of God. Like it's interesting that in the New Testament, in Luke 13:19, let's read it. Luke 13:19.
It is like a mustard seed, which a man took and put in the garden. And it grew and became a large tree, and the birds of the air nested in its branches.
So here we see Jesus equating the same imagery, like a big tree that grows, fills everything, the birds come to it. And in the light of like Babylonian culture, that symbology of the tree was clear. That was his kingdom, and his kingdom was like doing what God said, or was attempting to do what God said he will not do. Like that's being all over earth and being like the big kahuna all over the world. So that very existence of the tree was his proud coming forth and his attempt to overdo what God had revealed to him on the previous dream. So he wanted to show, I am the boss. And so that's like Nebuchadnezzar. And like, it's interesting that the Babylonians were very organized. Like, they have, if you go to the British Museum, there's crates of tablets of the diaries and like the memoirs and like the daily whatever of the king. So we kind of know with a lot of detail. A lot of get lost, but there's still a lot that's there. There is a fragment that I got that kind of gives the gist of Nebuchadnezzar at that time that happened. He says, I built this palace, the seat of my royalty over all the powerful kings. That's a palace of joy and a palace of laughter. In Babylon, the city that I built, we are all covered by honor. And even the cement that was used here was the blood of those that we conquer. And then he continues, I had built Babylon, this whole city, the glory of the Almighty gods. And she is more not worthy than anything else. and no other king never has created something like it. And no one before me has constructed something like it, and nobody will ever do something like that for our god Marduk. That was like the biggest god in Babylon. So he was full of himself. He was trying to be over God, and that's when God encounters him. But there's something that also caught my attention. I don't know if you ever caught your eye here in verse 17, and also in verse, I think verse 18 comes again, that like a word, like that's a decision of the watchers. Did you guys ever heard this before? Like, that's the only place in the Bible that actually that expression shows up here in the chapter. Because that's not really like the way Jews talk. Like, but since he is the king, they believe it in their, and they were not far from the truth. They believe it that like, above all the kings of Babylon, not kings, gods of Babylon, and they had about 60 different gods. So there was the most high God that they didn't name it, but that was a guy out there. He didn't interfere. Like, if you want something about rain, you go to that God. If you want something about that, you go to, like, and that other God was out there. But those guys, they kind of took government in a sort of a council. So and that most high God, they had 4 beings that they were called the watchers. Kind of reminds me of Ezekiel, like, or Revelation, like the 4 living beings. So that's why I don't think they were like too far from the truth. And those watchers that were like the covering angels of this guy, when God wanted to communicate something very important, he would send one of those. Like, that was a decree that could not be changed. So that's why we don't see that language before. But we see similar language on the Hebrew Bible elsewhere. We see in Psalms, we see in the book of Job. It's that language. It's what the Bible described elsewhere as the divine counsel. Or there are several examples on the Bible. I won't spend too much time on this today, because I think that deserves a day just for that. Because what that dream is getting to the core is what lies behind everything that happens with us. Here, Daniel is open up for us something that we know as the great controversy, the great controversy concept. Like that behind every decision we take, there is a struggle over our head, and sometimes God intervenes. And when he intervenes, that's not just something that he autocratically say, I do it because I like it. There's a whole process of like a clearinghouse, those watchers, or the divine council that kind of make sure God is straight. And why? Because if you remember Ezekiel 28 and Isaiah 14, the whole problem with sin and Lucifer started because, exactly. So now God is working in a aquarium, so to speak. All the universe is looking to him to see if he's playing by his own rules. And that's what's at stake here. But we will be talking here for at least another hour just on that. So since we're going to have a 2 weeks pause between this and the next episode. For the next 2 Wednesdays, we're going to be talking about just about that background theme here that's big. It's too big for one. It's a study that I entitled The Rules of Engagement. Because we don't know everything that happens on that great controversy, why God does what he does. But the Bible actually teaches us quite a lot. Not only here, in several other pieces of the Bible. And I'm going to put all those together for you on the next 2 Wednesdays. So we're going to be taking a break of Daniel, because if you guys have to travel, it's your problem. You're going to miss. But since you won't at least miss Daniel, but you're going to miss that other background thing. So now, let's go and see the explanation of it. Because the explanation, it's kind of precious too. So let's read the explanation of that Daniel gives, but let's read blow by blow, like each paragraph in Hebrew. So, who has the mic? Who can read for me? And I want one guy to read the whole thing, but we're going to read a few verses at a time. Okay, so we're going to start with verse 19 only. Just verse 19.
Then Daniel, whose name was Belshazzar, was astonished for a time, and his thoughts troubled him. So the king spoke to Belshazzar, "Do not let the dream or its interpretation trouble you." Belshazzar answered and said, "My lord, may the dream concern those who hate you, and its interpretation concern your enemies."
Here, I usually love that part because it shows how much Daniel loved that king. He was being a true Christian. Not because the king was nice to him, that he probably wasn't, but because as following what Jesus taught us, that was not different what Moses actually taught us first, that we should love our enemies, and that we should represent God's love to them. He was king. I hope, I pray that interpretation go to your enemies, because he got it right away what was going there. But in his I don't know if we can say this in English. In Portuguese, we say that he was like full of, like when somebody comes, like touch it very gently over the thing, like, "King, don't worry, like you're gonna die, but don't worry, like we'll be a nice dad," like. So that's what he tries to do, like trying to soften the blow that he's gonna, because he has to be faithful, but he is demonstrating there that he was caring about him. So then he explains on the next paragraph, that's a big one, verses 20 to 22. Yeah, keep the microphone. Keep the mic.
Gotcha. Okay, 20 to 22. The tree that you saw, which grew and became strong, whose height reached to the heavens, and which could be seen by all the earth, whose leaves were lovely and its fruit abundant, in which was food for all, under which the beasts of the field dwelt, and in whose branches the birds of the heaven had their home. It is you, O king, who have grown and become strong, for your greatness has grown and reaches to the heavens, and your dominion to the end of the earth.
So that was the good part of the dream. Like everybody likes to hear that you are it. Yeah. Like that was the good part of the dream. He was hearing that he is the best. You are the president of the most powerful nation. Hi, Paul, good evening. But since I already explained a little bit about the tree, let's not dwell a lot on here. Let's see what's coming next. Let's go to the bad side of the dream. So it goes to verses 23 to 25. Mm-hmm.
And as much as the king saw a watcher, a holy one, coming down from heaven and saying, "Chop the tree and destroy it, but leave its stump and roots in the earth, bound with a band of iron and bronze in the tender grass of the field. Let it be wet with the dew of heaven, and let him graze with the beast of the field till 7 times pass over him. This is the interpretation, O king, and this is the decree of the Most High, which has come upon my lord the king. They shall drive you from men, your dwelling shall be with the beast of the field, and they shall make you eat grass like oxen. They shall wet you with the dew of heaven, and 7 times shall pass over you, till you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and gives it to whomever he chooses.
Go to 27, please.
27?
Mhm.
And as much as they gave the land of the tree, your kingdom shall be assured to you after you come to know that heaven rules. Therefore, O king, let my advice be acceptable to you. Break off your sins by being righteous, and your iniquities by showing mercy to the poor. Perhaps there may be a lengthening of your prosperity.
And here, the explanation is quite clear. Like, it's a dreadful message, but it's a message that still has some hope on it. Like, because although the tree would be cut, it will not be uprooted or like chopped to pieces. Like, the prophecy says that for a period, that tree would be forbidden to grow. But after the end of that time, he would be brought back to the living with men. But during that time, he would be driven out. He would become a madman. He would become a madman, and he would be living out. And what was the point of all that?
Lord rules, and that he's the only one that's in charge. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's a temptation that we have today as well. Like, we do something half good, people start to talk, oh, you did well, and then we feel like full of ourselves. We have to always remember that everything we are, everything we have, is because of God and belongs to Him. We are not from ourselves. So let's keep moving. Let's see what happens then. Let's read from verses 28 until 33.
All this came upon King Nebuchadnezzar. At the end of the 12 months, he was walking about the royal palace of Babylon. Until what? 33, did you say?
33.
Okay, I can put my finger there. The king spoke, saying, Is not this great Babylon that I have built for a royal by my mighty power and for the honor of my majesty? While the word was
Could
still...
you hold a second? Could you hold a second?
Yeah.
I just almost skipped something. I thought I had commented, but I got carried away. Daniel makes one appeal to the king. What was the appeal? Be good. Get your life straight. And what he did is basically, he breaks down in 2 pieces. He says like, take care of your sins, the stuff that you did against God. Be righteous. Start to do the right thing. And then take care of iniquities, like the stuff that you do. The word that's translated here of against iniquities can be like an injury that you do to somebody. So, in the way they lay down, like it's more like a horizontal thing. Like I call Paul a fool, so now I have to apologize. So that's what he was talking about. In other words, like, make your life straight with God and with your fellow man. Be humble. And then you demonstrate that how? Doing what the Bible had said before. That's what the righteous person does. That's like walking justly, taking care of the needy, and uprighting the rights of those that cannot do anything by themselves. So that was what the king should have done and could have averted his fate. But then, what he did.
Okay, so let's read 30 again.
Mm-hmm.
The king spoke, saying, "Is not this great Babylon that I have built for a royal dwelling by my mighty power and for the honor of my majesty?" While the word was still in the king's mouth, a voice fell from heaven. "King Nebuchadnezzar, it is spoken, the kingdom has departed from you. And they shall drive you from men, and your dwelling shall be with the beast of the field. They shall make you eat grass like oxen, and 7 times shall pass over you, until you know that the Most High rules in the kingdom of men, and gives it to whoever he chooses." That very hour the word was fulfilled concerning Nebuchadnezzar. He was driven from men, and ate grass like oxen. His body was wet with the dew of heaven, till his hair had grown like eagle's feathers, and his nails like birds' claws.
Yeah. So like that's a nasty thing. That's a part of the book of Daniel. Like, Daniel is a funny book because it's so precise that, like, back 200 years ago, people said, nah, that was done before, like after the Maccabees, after, like, was done around the time of Jesus. Somebody did after the fact, make the facts align. Even before that started to be said, like people said, like before, oh, there is no king, the king from the next chapter, Belshazzar. There's no king Belshazzar on Babylon. So this guy is making out that book is just inaccurate. So about 200 years ago, hold and behold, we found the king. And then they said, no, that was done after the fact. About 80 years ago, we found the Dead Sea Scrolls. And we found scrolls of the book of Daniel dated 300 years before Jesus. Basically, within 50 to 70 years from the days of Daniel. So, can't be a forgery either. And then people said, like, oh, that never happened here, see? Like Nebuchadnezzar always was in power. That's what we have from his Babylonian record. So that never happened. In 1975, one of the scholars on the British Museum, they were going, like, they still to today. They still have dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of those tablets that nobody had the time to translate because it's a ton of stuff. So they were going through it, and I found basically the chronicles of the king. And you can actually even check this online if you Google it by AM34113. You can find that page of the diary, so to speak, that basically says, I'm going to read just a piece of it. It's kind of missing a few pieces, but it's still readable. It says like something like, one day, while he was in his palace, his life was looking like without, worthless, of no avail. he started to bark senseless orders, and he couldn't show affection to anybody, and he could not recognize anybody, and he could not participate in any decisions of the kingdom. So, and then continues talking like that about a period of like craziness that he had. And so that really happened. Was a 7-year period, as the prophecy says. And after that 7 years passed, what took for him to snap out of it? Let's read the final piece that goes from 34 to 37, then I'm going to make my final comments.
34. And at the end of the time, I lifted my eyes to heaven, and my understanding returned to me. And I blessed the Most High, and praised and honored him who lives forever. For his dominion is an everlasting dominion, and his kingdom is from generation to generation. All the inhabitants of the earth are reputed as nothing. He does according to his will in the army of heaven, and among the inhabitants of the earth. No one can restrain his hand, or say to him, "What have you done?" At the same time my reason returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my honor and my splendor returned to me. My counselors and nobles resorted to me. I was restored to my kingdom, and excellent majesty was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol the honor, the King of heaven. Okay. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, all of whose works are truth, and his ways justice, and those who walk in pride he is able to put down.
Before I even comment about the rest of the Nebuchadnezzar's testimony, because that's really is his written testimony. Like here we see the true marks of a converted man. Before, on the two previous encounters he had with God, he tried to keep away. He tried to keep the things like at arm's length, like was the king, the God of Daniel, the God of the friends. He wanted like to keep formal, like I gonna order everybody to worship you, so you'll be good with me. That was the kind of mentality. Here, no orders, no barking. He basically saying, praising God for what he did for him. In the way a true Christian should do his witnessing, his testimony, like showing what God did for you. There's no imposition, no hard feelings if anybody doesn't believe it. He just wants the word to get out what amazing things God did for him. But I want to call your attention that on the beginning of the chapter, he wanted to be famous. He wanted to be the guy. He wanted to be out there, and he ended up getting transformed in a monstrosity, in an animal, in a beast, because of his pride. And here, on verse 34, says that when he looked to heaven, then he came back to his senses. Like, in order for him to recover his humanity, he had first to acknowledge that without God, he was a beast. And instead of looking to himself, he had to look to God. He had to look to God above. And that, I think, is a big lesson to us. Because although we don't have the power and authority and the wealth of Nebuchadnezzar, and if you do, let me know, because then we can talk. But I don't think that's the case. And we share some similarities, because at the end of the day, we are all part of that great controversy. We may not have city to boast about, but we all have those little things that we boast, that we think we are it. And that is human nature. We always try to put ourselves in evidence and forget that our first and foremost thing on this earth is not to put ourselves first, it's put ourselves up front, but to uplift God in everything we do. We have to learn, as Nebuchadnezzar learned, that we find our highest position in life when we to be humble, when we go humbly and kneel at the feet of the cross. Nebuchadnezzar found this out through his experience. And if we think on our own experience, we're kind of going to get to the same conclusion, that the things we pass in life, they have that same objective, to help us to understand that without God, we are nothing. And I guess the other lesson comes from that final praise that Nebuchadnezzar do. Did you notice his words? He doesn't complain for what God did to him. He doesn't ask, as I do several times, at times, like, why me? And he reserves his comments to God alone. And at the end of his experience, Nebuchadnezzar, he voices no. It's as if he looks back with almost gratitude for everything that God passed through. He literally ate grass for. So this little God grass for it was Nebuchadnezzar argument. Now, simply standing back, God is life. And we, the same kind, look back to on our and to much bitterness, but everything we. I close my Bible. God did what He did. What inspiration, and even the like as we see life to choose the same choices as God would have done if we were in His place. So let's praise God even for the bad things on our life, because through those we grow to be humble and we grow to put God back in the center stage of our life. So may we get off today as Nebuchadnezzar with a song on our heart, because everything God did. Thank you so much, because bad times and good times, But we all know, especially now after studying together the testimony of Nebuchadnezzar, we see that in all things you work for our own good. So help us to be always content in the way you led our lives. Help us to always be happy and jolly about the way you led us. And even when we have to go through sorrowful or hurtful situations, help us to understand that you are always in control and that your word is true and faithful when you say that in the book of Corinthians that you don't let anything come to our way if it's not for our own good, if it's not for us to grow. You never allow anything that's bigger than our own strength. And above all, when you allow something bad or sorrowful come to our life, with the situation we already grant us a way out. So help us to stray, to cling to you, and in everything sing praises to you. If you bless us, praise be your name. If